So now that I've spent a full year working from home, I gotta say, it's been pretty awesome. My favorite part is having the freedom to set up my workspace the way that I want. But with that said, it does have its own set of challenges. Now, the biggest of which is staying focused while surrounded by all sorts of distractions. And I found this to be even more difficult now that my day job and side hustle occupy that same space. The worst offender for me is actually this laptop and the USB dock that sits behind the monitor. I found that even if I so much as glance at them, my mind immediately switches gear from my engineering work to my YouTube work. And sure, I could create another workspace to separate the two, but let's be honest, this monitor and desk are just too awesome not to use for everything. So instead, I decided to make a couple additions to the desk to clean up this clutter, keeping on my desk only what's relevant to the work I'm doing at the moment. And yes, that also means removing my work laptop when it's time to focus on YouTube, but that's much simpler to do. I originally wasn't even going to make a video about this because it's just such a simple project that could be done in a couple hours with very few tools and some pieces of scrap wood. But with more and more people working from home nowadays, I feel that the topic of having a clean and clutter-free workspace is really important because it directly impacts our mindset and our productivity throughout the day. And I hope that this project will bring you some clarity among this chaos as it has done for me. Let's get to it. Alright, so the plan is to make a couple of C-shaped pieces for these devices to nest into. And then we're going to bolt this whole assembly to the bottom of the desk. And it's going to look something like this. Let's draw this out real quick. So if you look at this, there are going to be three really important measurements here. The first is the size of this recess because I want this USB-C dock to sit in there really snug because I'm always plugging things in and taking things out of this. And then the second and third are the thicknesses and length of the top flange because I'm going to sandwich this SSD reader between the dock and the desk. And I also want it to be pinched on both sides by the flanges. So if we take some measurements here, the height of this recess is going to be 44 millimeters. So let's transfer that to the drawing. Oops, we need to constrain these for now so the shape doesn't change. And the SSD reader measures at 13.5 millimeters tall, so we're going to set the thickness of the walls to that. And finally, if we stack the SSD reader on top of the dock, the edge-to-edge distance is roughly 29 millimeters. And just to be safe, let's just make that 30 millimeters for now. Now finally, the depth of the stack up, it's 110 millimeters. So let's extrude that to 120 millimeters to give us some room for adjustments. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a copy for the other side, drag it out and rotate it. Oh, and if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. And if you're wondering what app I'm using right now, this thing is called Shaper 3D, and I have a couple of tutorials which I'll link in the descriptions below if you're interested. But let's export this as a drawing and figure out what we need to cut. Then let's resize this a little bit to make things a little bit easier to see. And then let's pull out some dimensions. So I think that's all the dimensions we're going to need. So according to this, we need a stock that's 71 millimeters wide by 120 millimeters long by 43.5 millimeters thick. So let's get cutting. Alright, so we've got our stock milled, and you probably noticed from the video that I milled up two pieces. This longer one will actually be made into 3 holders for my laptop, but since they're made the exact same way as the one for the USB dock, other than just some different dimensions, I'm only focusing on the holders for the dock for the video. So anyway, this piece measures about 250 millimeters long. So what I'm going to do is cut the recess through this entire length and then cross cut it into 2 equal length parts. So let's start laying out the groove. Since we said earlier that each wall will be 13.5 millimeters thick, that's how far away from the edges I'm going to draw these lines. That means everything inside this rectangle we just formed is what we need to remove. And I always like to double check and make sure that everything still matches the drawing. And that looks pretty good. Alright, to make the cut, I'm going to swap over to my dado set and then line up the tip of the blade to just underneath this horizontal line and the edge of the blade to just inside one of these vertical lines. This way I can easily make adjustments if I need to remove more material to sneak up on the fit. So what I'm going to do is push this workpiece through and then rotate it this way to make a second pass, and then just readjust the fence to remove whatever materials left in the middle. This is just a really quick way to ensure the recess will be centered in the workpiece. So let's set that up and start cutting. Alright, I gotta show you guys this real quick. Check this out. 13.5, 13.5, 13.5. And the fit, it's perfect. I think I did a pretty good job, if I may say so myself. Now, I'm not trying to boast or anything, but we gotta remember to give ourselves a little pat on the back with small victories around the shop, because we all know that more often than not, nothing ever goes as planned. So, good job, Alex. Oh man. Anyways, I cut these two pieces longer than they had to be for 2 reasons. Number one, even though the dock fits in there really nice and tight, I think over time with just me jamming stuff in there, it's gonna want to slide back. And the other thing is this SSD reader is made from some really smooth plastic and has a really slim profile that even with it being sandwiched fairly tight between the flanges and the desk, there's really not enough surface area to keep it from sliding when I plug in the SSD. So I'm gonna need to add a couple of stops behind these units. And I found this strip of offcut on the floor, which measures about 3 millimeters by 4 millimeters and should be strong enough to prevent the dock from sliding while also small enough to not block any of the ports. And all I had to do is just cut these into length and then glue them right behind the dock. Alright, so my plan for holding the SSD reader in place is going to be a little different. Of course, I can use this, whatever's left of this piece of strip and just glue it right behind the unit, and it's probably going to work, but I don't want this thing to look like such an afterthought, even though I know people would probably never see this. And since this is a woodworking channel, I figured I should probably at least make it look like I put in some effort to work on this wood. Alright, so if I put this SSD reader on top of the dock, you can see in the back that the wood and the device forms this right trapezoid in these corners. And the angle looks to be about 45 degrees, so that makes things really easy. So what I'm going to do is take this piece of offcut from when I was milling up the stock for these holders and just cut these into 12 millimeter wide strips, then tilt my blade at 45 degrees and cut off a corner. Then just cross cut them to length and glue it behind the SSD reader. And since this piece of offcut and the stock for the holders all came from the same piece of wood, it's gonna look really clean, I think. Alright, I think that's gonna work really well. But now that I have everything together, it does look a little bit chunky, so I'm going to take my 45-degree chamfer bit and cut a bevel around the outside of these blocks. I think that's going to make it look a lot better and probably going to match the desk a lot better as well. Then I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes for attaching these under the desk with some 1/4-20 bolts. And these are my favorite to use because of the large diameter and low profile head. I'm gonna have links to these in the descriptions if this is something you're interested in. Now the first thing I'm gonna do is take a 3/4 inch Forstner bit to drill a recess for the head to sit in. And I'm gonna swap over to a 5/16 inch drill bit to drill all the way through. Now since the bottom flange is gonna get in the way of that, I'm going to drill all the way through the bottom flange with the Forstner bit. Alternatively, I could just trim off a portion of this bottom flange to allow the shank of the Forstner bit to pass by. But I think I'm just going to first drill through and see what that looks like, and then we can always come back and trim it off if we need to. Alright, these things look so much better with the bevels added. Since I was cutting bevels along the end grain, it's actually kind of dangerous to do on the router table because the bit could easily catch the grain and create a kickback if you don't have good control of the piece. So I recommend cutting these on the table saw instead. It's just going to be so much safer that way. But anyway, before I throw some finish on these and get them installed, I want to thank Skillshare for making this video possible. Now, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes on creativity, productivity, woodworking, and more. I recently took a class by Thomas Frank called Productivity for Creatives. And if, like me, you often feel unproductive or disorganized, this class will change your life. It helped me to completely rethink how I schedule my days and get shit done. And these aren't just tips and tricks that you can find in a 10-minute YouTube video. This is a class on how to build systems and the mindset to do more work effectively every single day. And it's actually what motivated me to take a look at my own workspace to see what I needed to change to reduce distractions and be more productive. And if you guys want to check out this class or any other classes, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to sign up with the link in the descriptions will get a free trial to the premium membership. And if you want to continue your membership afterwards, Skillshare is super affordable with an annual subscription of less than $10 a month. That's less than Netflix and provide a whole lot more value. So think about it while I get these installed. We're all spending a lot more time at home nowadays, so setting up that workspace and removing any potential distractions is super important in keeping us focused. This was a small, simple project, but a huge step toward building that clean and minimal workspace necessary to keeping us productive. And I really wish that I had done it sooner. And if you guys enjoyed this video and was able to take something away from it, be sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments to show the YouTube algorithm what's up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so I feel like I have some friends.